Presenting Benny Goodman and his music.
The bus. There's Miles in the window. He'll be by in a minute, I'm sure. Hey, Chris and Luann. Hey, Timothy. Hiya, Kaylin and Jeanette. More water around here. I do not. I'm gonna go refill my water. I'll be right with you guys.
Benny Goodman, ladies and gentlemen, the man with the torrid clarinet and the even more torrid band who purveys assorted rhythms, all danceable, in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago. And first of all, one of Irving Berlin's greatest hits, Blue Skies.
Hey, Gene. Hey, Katie. Whoa, this tastes like hose water. Oh, yeah. Hey, Heather. Hey, Dina. Morning, Laura. I'm glad to have you for a minute anyway. Hey, Jeanette. You know, I believe, according to the IRS, I probably still own that company. Hey, Gladys. Hey, Susan. I was one of the founders of that company. Hey, Susan. Hey, Martin. I don't know, I just wasn't... I was there for a few years, but I just wasn't proud of the work we were doing. Hey, Keely. Hey, Eileen. Hey, Diane. Well, you know, I don't know what the quality is like now. It was like 15 years ago. There's a lot of focus at the time on like the adult aspects of it. Meanwhile, I was trying to write children's books for a living. Hey, Bella. Hey, Mom. Hey, Diane. Hey, Lisa. Ooh, tiki party. Maybe I should just do the bonus pub crawl tonight. Can I do that? Would people show up if I just randomly did a pub crawl tonight? I don't know. Hey, Jan. I could throw up the tiki one tonight. I don't know. I feel like I need a little more warning than that. Hey, Miles. Let's get this thing shut. Charge it. Got my list of photographs that I need at Trinity. So that I just don't have a good shot of, or maybe not sure, well, even if there is a good shot out there. Hey, Kathy. You know, that sounds about right. In my day, we were in Chicago. We also did the Virgin Mary Salt Stain, the Lucre Sausage Factory, the Liars Club. Usually Iroquois or Eastland. Morning, Grandma Bell. Hey, JK over on Twitch. Susan and Denise. Hi, all around. Hey, check this out. My parents got me this record on my birthday. Benny Goodman at the Congress Hotel. It's the show that we're always playing, but on vinyl.
Benny Goodman presents Helen Ward singing With All My Heart.
Hey, Betsy. Julianne. Happy birthday, Floresita. Careful. Hey, Tato. Sarah, that's a good plan. Had another Star Wars fan pull up next to me in traffic yesterday and like, hey, nice BB-8s, and he held up his Chewbacca's. Hey, Bob. Last night was the first time I'd done an H.H. Holmes tour in a long time. I was really tempted to read bits of the screenplay a guy sent me about Holmes that he wants me to invest in, or help crowdfund investments for. But I don't know, he kept saying it's confidential. It also reads like it was written by AI. You're all I'll ever care for with all my heart. Give it just another minute for people to get on. We'll let Betty finish up this tune. Well, Helen Ward finishing up this tune. Morning, Doreen. Tell the stars above you to say again I love you with all my fart. The fact that fart rhymes with so many things is the enemy of the smart parody songwriter. Kathy, last I heard the Holmes series on Hulu is currently dead in the water. I keep thinking it's maybe because people do more research and find out, oh wait, none of this is true. Sorry, guys. Bob, sorry to hear that. I wondered where you were. Hey, Carissa, glad to have you back then.
Benny Goodman goes way back and gets a lot of rhythm out of Walk, Jenny, Walk.
All right, so that is Benny Goodman. So welcome along, everybody. Oh, I didn't even take these down yet. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. This week, I got the first royalty check for the Mysterious Chicago book, which came out 7 years ago. But thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. I'm Adam. Hey, Debbie, sorry we missed you last night. It happens, you know, the traffic and everything, the movie, the parking, trying to find the place. Sometimes that just happens. Throw me a line. I'll get you on the list for the next one if you want. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. I've been a tour guide and historian here in Chicago for going on 20 years now. Got about a dozen history books out, besides the finally broken even Mysterious Chicago book, H.H. Holmes, The True History. That one, the advance was so small they broke even just by selling the audiobook rights. Murder Maps USA, new from Thames and Hudson. Most notably, perhaps, Graceland Cemetery, Chicago's stories, symbols, and secrets. Cemetery books are things that I especially like doing. It's a chance to get people's stories told that haven't been told before. That's a responsibility that I take very seriously. I am not throwing away my shot. And tying in, what we've been working on this past summer is a book about the graveyards in Manhattan, New York City, places people like Alexander Hamilton, of course, but also just a lot of regular everyday people of whom we don't really know very much. So, that's what I've been doing over the course of this summer, is that this is so much what is on my mind these days, like digging through archives all the time, finding this stuff. Really, Sunday morning tours these days have been an update, partly to refresh my own memory and partly to keep everybody up to date with what I'm doing. We've just been covering this week's research at Trinity Churchyard. Or at St. Paul's when I was working on that one. But right now we've been on Trinity. This week I've been doing a couple of things in the north section of Trinity Churchyard. I'm kind of going through geographically. We'll start out here today. We started this week with the oldest identified gravestones at Trinity. Now, there could be a couple that are a little older than these, but there's a lot of them they just don't have any data or identification on. But the one on the left over here is a young person who was about 5 years old by the name of Richard Churcher, who died in 1681. Now, that's about 20 years before Trinity Church was even built, which is really quite a thing to think about. But this is the back of it. It's really fairly ornate on the back, considering just how primitive it is. You can see over here, it's the one one to the right, where there's no, it's all block letters, there's no spacing even between the letters, line breaks are irregular. We don't really know a single thing about Richard other than what's on the back of his gravestone. There is also next to him, the one on the left is Anne Churcher. And this one is remarkably better done. There's more of a serif font there. There's the floral ornamentation around it. The line breaks are proper. Here lieth the body of Anne Churcher, died May the 14th, 1691, age 17 years. And also, the next thing, and she was buried, it actually gives the date of her burial of a couple of days later, the 16th. Now, that's an interesting thing that they would include both the date of death and the date of burial. And one possible reason is that her parents must have thought that this was a very momentous occasion in New York history, which it was. That day that she was buried marked the end of Leisler's Rebellion. Now, this was a thing in the late 1600s. England had been going back and forth about being Protestant or Catholic, Protestant or Catholic. You could get burned at the stake for not being Catholic enough. You could get burned at the stake for being too Catholic. A loyal subject would have had to change religions a few times if they lived over the course of the right time period. So after what they called the Glorious Revolution, when the Protestants took over, when the Catholic king was deposed, a lot of the old king's representatives were still operating in the colonies. And a guy named Jacob Leisler, a merchant here in New York, decided there was going to be too much Catholic influence coming in. So he had kind of an organized rebellion against the current rulers, kind of took control, said, okay, I am now the provincial ruler of the thing. But then when the proper ruler came in, Leisler's political enemies got the guy drunk and ordered him to sign a death warrant for Jacob Leisler. This was generally, it's thought that they made him drunk. He was originally inclined just to send him back to stand trial, but instead he had him convicted of treason and signed the death warrant for him, possibly while drunk. So Jacob Leisler was hanged about 2 blocks away from here. Hanged, then his corpse beheaded. I'm still trying to get a good source on the beheading part, but it's usually said. And then buried right on the spot in his own garden, right about where the Benjamin Franklin statue is now, near the entrance to the Brooklyn Bridge. A few years later, the political winds changed. He was disinterred and reburied with honor in the Dutch church, but that burned down. There's some rumor that the New York Historical Society might have some remnants of the grave, but it just comes off of an old inventory. They don't even know if they got him anymore. I really ought to write to him about that. But all of that happened, that execution, that public execution happened the day that Anne Churcher was buried. So it's significant that her parents wanted to put that onto there. Or at least we think so. It doesn't really tell us what side they were on. But it was an important day anyway. It is one of those events that is now recorded but not underlined in New York history anymore. And just next to that, we got those 4 here. Right in front is a woman by the name of Sarah Naylor. I'm going to move back a little bit in my file so I can have some of the data up in the quotes. Now, Sarah Naylor was a little bit later. Where is this one? She died almost a century afterwards. She died in 1766. And you'll notice the line breaks are particularly uneven here. But this one is an original epitaph. It's the last line is currently buried. And they have to rebury these things now and then just to keep them standing. But it says at the bottom, made by herself 6 days before her death. And the poem, with interesting rhyme schemes and broken meter, says, let no one mourn the reason why her soul ascended to God on high, there with angels and archangels to dwell, hallelujah, hallelujah, to God on high. Now, there's a quote, a guy walking around the place in the late 19th century transcribed it and said, it was engraved by a sculptor who evidently had no rhythm in his soul. Poor soul! Her little vanity causes a smile after all these years have passed. All we really know about Sarah Naylor herself, beside a penchant for writing what is really effectively blank verse, is she was the wife of a sailor. That's really about it. Oftentimes, that's all we can find. Well, moving right next to her is one of the older and more famous graves. This is another one with an epitaph that is known to be original. The last line, again, is now not visible, but it says, made by himself, right on it. It's a guy by the name of Sidney Breeze. We'll move in a little bit closer here. His great-grandchildren had this stone marker erected around it and had it recut because it was fading away like most of them do. But it's still kind of hard to see now, but there's this pleasant-looking cherub up at the top about to take flight. And, oh yeah, it does actually, you can read, made by himself right at the top. And the epitaph reads, "Ha! Sidney, Sidney, liest thou here? I here lie till time has flown to its extremity." Sidney Breeze worked with the British Navy for a long time when he was a young man. Actually got into a duel with an officer and kept a bullet in his gut for the rest of his life, according to family legend. There is quite a bit of family legend about this guy, much more than a lot of the others, including the fact one of them said that he was one of the most genial and handsome men of his time. We do know that he was very into wine. He had his own wine bottles, some of which are still extant today, was known for throwing awesome parties. There was one particular one that everybody remembered where he invited all the people who he owed money to come to a party. When they looked under the plates, there was a check for the full amount with interest, which made them party all the harder. But also, he was known for his singing, but the problem was he was so popular with his parties, with his singing, that British officers loved to hang out with him. And towards the end of his life, the last couple of years, as the British officers became less and less popular in New York, he became less and less popular. It is even said that he forbid his son to sing because that was what made him so unpopular. But he was generally a well-known guy around town. He must have been. He was a merchant, selling things like. For some reason, my picture's no longer coming up. Oh, I know why. He mostly sold looking glasses in his shop, but I haven't found a single ad for his shop that says where it was. He was just that well known that everybody already knew where Sidney Breeze's was. He didn't need to specify it in the advertising. But for all of the fun stuff about him, his slightly goofy epitaph, etc., there's also a bit of a dark side. In 1740 in New York, they had what is now known as the Negro Conspiracy. The basic idea was there had been a couple of fires, and based on the loopy testimony of a teenage girl, it was all because some rogue Catholic had snuck into town, converted several of the enslaved people, and hatched a plot to burn the entire city and make some guy who owned a tavern the king. It was very, very loopy situation. It doesn't really resemble the anti-slavery crackdowns that happened in the South a century later. It's much more akin with the Salem witch trials half a century before. But in the end, people were actually burned at the stake. Quite a few people were hanged, and Sidney Breeze was on the jury. The jury didn't deliberate for very long, but it's hard to hold it against him personally because everybody else in town would have made the same ruling that he did, and if he hadn't, it would have been a real problem. His entire family probably would have fallen under great suspicion at the time. It's complicated stuff, but we'll move over a little. Of course, complication is the refuge of the powerful. Check out this one. It's a little bit further down. Such a spooky looking one. Now, one right below me. This is they do know at Trinity that this used to say Stephen Theobald. But that's all that is really known. The presence of this marker here is really the only indication that somebody named Stephen Theobald ever existed in New York. There's nothing about the records or anything like that. But over to the side of it, it's a very interesting one. Mary Dollzel. Mary Dollzel was, let me check my notes over here, the wife of, I've got it written down, the wife of another young merchant named James Dollzel. He opened a grocery warehouse at Burling Slip a year before Mary died, took out ads promising that as a young beginner, I will make it my study to merit the favor of the public, keeping everything of the best kind and selling at the smallest profit. Now, there was a history teacher in New York who does a whole unit, a whole lesson based on the grave of Mary Dollzel. So right down below it here, there's this poem, which appears nowhere else. It appears to be an original poem. It reads, "Adieu, my dearest babes and tender husband dear, the time of my departure is now drawing near, and when I'm laid low in the silent grave, where the monarch is equal with the slave, weep not, my friends, I hope to be at rest, I hope there to be at rest, to be with Jesus Christ, it is the best." So we can look at this and what can we learn about Mary? What can we infer about her? She died at the age of 28. We can see that she was a Christian. We can see that she lived in New York. We can see that she was the wife of somebody who she thought of as her husband, dear. Apparently, in the class, there's a big debate about whether "dearest babes" means the tender husband or just the children. Now, there's also another line in here that it is better to be where the monarch is equal to the slave. This would have been a really, really progressive proposition to put forth in 1764. The idea that the social hierarchy was not as good as some place where where the king would be equal to the slave. To think of that as better would be remarkably progressive. There's the other question, though, are these really Mary's own sentiments, or did somebody else write them for her? It could have actually just been the gravestone carver. I have a hard time figuring out where people decided what the gravestones would say. There's a lot of them that just come up over and over. You feel like there must have been like a commonplace book that a lot of graveyard people had. But also, when you write something in your textbook, jokes that kids tell around the playground spread entirely by word of mouth, and it seems to have happened with common epitaphs as well. This one seems to be original. It doesn't say made by herself anywhere, so we can't necessarily assume that these are her own sentiments, not that of her husband's. If her husband wrote it, having her say, "My tender husband, dear," that's kind of amusing to me. But also, we'll check out below here. You can see it's tender husband, dear. Had to write in the dear part. Do this in a bit. They ran out of room. Tender husband, dear. Which at least is makes it a little bit closer to trying to have the lines break on the rhyming word than they do on a lot of these, where the rhyme just comes somewhere random in the middle. Let's zip over to the past here. You see this glowing one. In Des Moines, there was some kind of legend about a glowing grave at one of the gravestones. I know my cousin Brian mentioned having gone out there one time. I wish I knew more about that because I can't find anything else about it. That's one I got to dig out of I know it was in the paper once. I bet I ought to be able to find it. That is the Venables. Well, it was one of them. It's a double gravestone, but it was only ever used once for Mr. Charles Venables. Let me move down a little bit here. I know I got him in. Other section. Yeah, he was a ladies' hairdresser. He arrived from London in the early 1790s, took out ads promising the ladies of New York, at least those who will favor me with their command, that I will dress them in the most modern style on such terms as will give general satisfaction. You could leave orders for him at St. Paul's. When it says hairdresser, I think that means he's talking about wigs in particular. There is an epitaph on here. It's kind of hard to read in the picture. It's way back from the path. But it says, "Farewell, my dear and loving wife, my children and my friends. I hope in heaven to see you all, where all things have their ends. And though I die all in my prime and in my youthful days, I hope the Lord will raise me up to live with him always." That second four lines appear on a number of different gravestones. They're just one of those common epitaphs, where the first four come from a poem/letter, written on the eve of his execution by the poet Robert Smith. Sorry, wrong Robert Smith who wrote dark poetry. This was a Robert Smith who died in 1555. He was a Protestant martyr at a time when it was still the law that you had to be Catholic in England before you could be arrested for being Catholic in New York a couple of centuries later. Over on the left there is Robert Smith, who denied the doctrine of transubstantiation and hence was burned at the stake. He wrote a number of letters. His whole story and a lot of the letters and poems he wrote were included in a Book of Martyrs by John Fox. Hugely popular title from 1563, still in print for a couple of hundred years. Still very well known at the time of Charles Venables. And I'll move down the road from here to the guy that I waited until my birthday to write about because I've been waiting to get to this entry. I kind of timed it just right. Did skip ahead slightly. This is maybe my favorite. Adam Allen, comedian. Died in 1768. Can't find anything to indicate how old he was at the time. They may not have even known. But it says it was erected by his friends as a symbol of their unfeigned regard, for he had possessed many good qualities, but as he was a man, he had the frailties common to man's nature. It's just so suggestive. What could this guy have been up to? What could this comedian have done that made them carve his frailties right into the gravestone? You can bet it wasn't just that he was mortal. Now, there's a little bit of a hint of this. We know that he had gone bankrupt when he was in England before he moved to the United States to join the Old American Company of Comedians, which was really like the first professional theater troupe in the colonies. Hang on, I lost this one. But I definitely want to put it in, so hence. Here. Here's a thing from Philadelphia, and this shortly after he arrived. For the benefit of Mr. Allen, by his permission at the theater on Society Hill on Saturday next will be a performance of the tragedy of Macbeth. Doesn't mention which part he's going to be playing, which I think is rather interesting. He was probably that doorkeeper. The porter, but also will be added to the Stagecoach, or Macabone the Brave Irishman by Mr. Allen, in which will be introduced the history of Mr. Allen and the Three Lawyers. I've got a copy of the Stagecoach. I need to read it. I want to figure out if there's some kind of story about three lawyers there. Apparently, Mr. Allen had been involved in some kind of legal fracas involving three lawyers that everybody in town already knew about, and that they would be parodying or satirizing by doing the Stagecoach that night. Now, he worked around the whole New England vicinity for a long time. What we really know about him is almost nothing other than what we get in these theatrical lists showing what kind of roles he played. But we can pick out quite a lot. I mean, just from the theatrical listings, we can picture these people in their starched coats and their powdered wigs crowding into the theater. The actors going around with the benefit handbills trying to acquire patrons and sell tickets. We do know most of the roles that he's listed as playing are very broad comedy roles, the kind of roles that Jack Black would end up playing in a later generation. But also he played like Friar Lawrence, he was a Iago at one point, he was the gravedigger in Hamlet, which makes all the sense in the world, I think. But perhaps most famously, he was the first in the colonies to play Lord Chalkstone in a David Garrick play called The Leith. It was one of those barroom comedies. David Garrick wrote in a second edition that had this guy Chalkstone show up, a lecherous, drunken old lord who just shows up and sets forth on various topics. I've got the play up here so I could read a bit of it. He says, I drink the same wines, eat the same dishes, keep the same hours, the same company, and notwithstanding the gravity of my doctors, I would not abstain from French wines and French cookery to save the souls and body of the whole College of Physicians. You don't imagine, philosopher, that I have hobbled here with a bundle of complaints at my back. My legs indeed are something the worse for wear, but your waters, I suppose, can't change or make 'em any better. Then somebody talks about a little bit of a battle or a wager. He says, why not? Wagers are nowadays the only proofs and arguments that are made use of by people of fashion. All disputes about politics, operas, trade, gaming, horse racing, or religion are determined now by 6-4 and 2-1, and persons of quality are by this method most agreeably released from the hardship of thinking or reasoning upon any subject. I'll tell you, when gentlemen quarreled heretofore, what did they do? They drew their swords, and I have been run through the body myself, but no matter for that. What do they do now? They draw their purses. Before the lie can be given, a wager is laid, and so, instead of resenting, we pocket our affronts. Then somebody mentions a mother-in-law, and he immediately jumps in, ergo, an old woman with a good constitution and a damned large jointure upon your estate is the devil. My mother was the very thing, and yet from the moment I pitied her, I never once wished her dead, and was really very uneasy when she tumbled downstairs and did not speak a single word for a whole fortnight. I backed her life against 2 old countesses, an aunt of Sir Henry Rattled that was troubled with asthma, my fat landlady at Salt Hill, and the mad woman of Trowbridge at 500 each per annum. She outlived them all but the last, by which means I hedged off a damn jointure, made her life an advantage to me, and so continued my filial associations to her last moments. None of your waters for me, damn 'em all. I never drink any but at Bath. I come merely for a little conversation with you and to see your Elysian fields here. No taste, no fancy in the whole world. Your river there, what you call? Etc. He just goes on and on like this about every subject, gardening, sex, gender, whatever just happens to come up. Very interesting. You can definitely get a sense of at least what kind of actor Adam Allen was by looking at stuff like this. All right. It's a fun piece. One of his other ones, A Miss in Her Teens, that was just made a movie out of a few years back. I had to go look. I'm intending to look it up sooner or later. But all right. So that is some of what I have worked on this week. Not all of what I've worked on this week. I've still got a couple that I don't have good enough pictures of to add in, like Captain Henry Ford, who was involved in Potawatomi treaties that actually mix into Chicago a little bit, and actually ended up finding me a really good fart story too. I do like those. All right, so Thursday night, the next full-length tour is going to be Did They Hang the Wrong Man? A collection of true crime stories in Chicago that ended with the hanging of somebody who might not have really been the guilty party. There are a lot of those. Next in-person one. Last we already did July 15th, The Devil Downtown. Why did this not update? It should have updated. Graceland Cemetery next Sunday, a week from today at 11 o'clock. Then Grave Robbing 101. That'll include on August 12th and Rose Hill August 13th. And Eli, my brother of the Dead Ringers with Time Travel Pub Crawl fame, will be in town for those ones. So... all right, everybody, thanks a lot for joining me. I will put the Benny Goodman back on, and we can hang out for a bit just like we usually do. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. Here's Benny.
Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
There we go. All right, thanks, everybody. Christine, I'm not up on that case enough to say. Honestly, turn of the 20th century, the first couple of decades of that, any time when Shippey was the chief of police or Coroner Hoffman or was either the sheriff or the coroner, just about every decision should have been vacated. Yeah, Christiana, I know about the Starved Rock murders, but I'm not an expert on them. They're a little bit out of my jurisdiction. Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, Mandy's got a whole show on the Starved Rock murders. I don't usually do stuff that recent because I have too much of a tendency to be a smartass about things. Bob, awesome. And remember, it's next Sunday at Graceland. It'll be the 23rd, so we probably won't do the whole update next week. Cause I'll have an 11 o'clock tour. We'll just do something at Graceland.
Benny Goodman. And now another one just in the same vein. Rosetta.
Todd, sorry to hear that. Octavio, sorry to hear that. That happens. I want as little drama on the fan page as possible. Of course, I'm not involved in it myself, but when people ask if they can put that, like, just be nice to each other. Don't. There's always tend to turn into drama. I'm always nervous about that. Yeah, you guys have done such a great job overall on keeping the drama level low, keeping everybody nice. Am I continuing to do the Lincoln Park Zoo first Tuesday after the Congress? Yes. That should go on sale pretty soon. Well, if you want to be a smartass about that guy all you want. If anybody's going to run in defending him, get rid of him. No, that's me getting messages from Michael Glover Smith. A recording of Dylan covering Merle Haggard's Bad Actor a couple of weeks ago finally surfaced. It's a big deal.
Is being presented from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. And now Benny Goodman's arrangement of the Bugle Call Rang.
Hey, Susan, I'm a little surprised. I will do that, Susan. Susan Michael says hi back. Good luck with a busy day, Kathy. I also have a busy day. I have to unpack my new drill. Where did I put that thing anyway? Found it on Blueberry Hill, just like everybody told me. Heather, yes, I do have power tools. Not necessarily as high powered as one might who didn't live in an apartment. But, you know, these shelves don't hang themselves. I don't know what I'm going to drill right now. But lately I tried to do some modifications to my bed, and the drills I had are just failing. Here's the boy. Roald Dahl was buried with a power saw. You know what? My first smartass joke that got me in trouble was about Roald Dahl. It was in 4th grade. My teacher announced that Roald Dahl had died, and I said they should change his name to Rolled Over and Died. She was not amused. We didn't know about his anti-Semitism or anything at the time, but... Ooh, new sick Fisher. All right, well, I know where we're going tomorrow, then. 1823 Belmont, all right. Trump cat scratcher. You know, I had a Newt Gingrich cat toy once that the cats could wreck. My fellow West Georgia alum. Mike says he was buried 6 weeks ago after being shot for asking a woman to spoon-feed him mayonnaise. Well, yeah, Mike. One who goes around asking people to spoon-feed the mayonnaise before you've consented to such things. Yeah, that probably happens. Of course, Bethania is also haunted by a foul-mouthed old woman, so watch out for her. She's harsh. Mike, was this a service the woman offers through her OnlyFans or something? Because in that case, otherwise that would be a very strange request to make. Also, mayonnaise, really? Mike, those are some very interesting fetishes, and I respect you for them, except for the mayonnaise part. But if you're trying to shock me with such things, ain't gonna work. No, Mike, I will not be digging you up and handling your manhood. I'd have to go buy some needle-nose pliers first. All right, have a good day, Bob. If you're gonna come in trolling, at least be creative and fun with it. So,
Goodman presents On the Alamo.
Oh, we have nightmares about mayo now for sure. Miles. I ain't gonna kink shame except for, the mayo part. Thank you, Christine. Good Sunday, Heather. Christine, not really. I'm familiar with Jeopardy, but I never have it on. Yeah, I don't have mayonnaise in the house, honestly. I never use it for anything. If it was like a chili ancho mayo, sure. But just mayo on its own, eh. Miles. I see. Alright, well, I think Miles is letting me know it is time to knock it off. I tend to listen when he says such things. So everybody, thanks a lot for joining me. We'll be back tomorrow for Mural Monday. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. Stay strong, don't kink shame unless Mayo is involved. But of course, everybody stay spooky. Have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow.